Hi Tracy, how are you?
Hello, Kay. I'm very well, thanks. And you?
Yeah, good, thank you. It's coming towards the end of a very long day of being on Zoom under the spotlights and with various technologies. Feels like I feel very sleepy and tired, so we'll have a sleepy conversation.
That sounds
How's
good
your
to me.
How's your week been?
I can't believe that yet another week has gone by. How has that happened? I think it's Thursday, but I couldn't be entirely sure because everything's just kind of merging into one now, isn't it?
It's a strange one. I have really lost track of time. Interestingly, I took my watch off when we arrived back here, whenever that was, a month ago. I just thought, the whole principle of lockdown, one of the things I can do is take my watch off and not live by clock time. Of course, it hasn't quite worked out like that, but somewhere in my organization of time, it's been scrambled, and I have to keep going back to my calendar and just check in again and just check in again. Strange thing.
I know that feeling. I haven't been wearing my watch either, to be honest. Um, I think we're surrounded by time on the computer, on the wall, on your phone, in the car, all of those places. The only time I tend to wear it is when I'm teaching, so that or training, so it just doesn't look kind of conspicuous when I get my phone out and start checking the time, which doesn't feel quite right somehow.
Oh, yeah, I have a little clock which I've just put just at beyond my computer screen. This makeshift office. I actually have a full study, but it's so chaotic with thousands of things that I would normally go into the study to operate, to look at or research or use or whatever. And so yeah, I've just got this makeshift office right now, which is full of all sorts of weird and wonderful new technological things. And today I'm trying out my headphones and this lapel mic, which I would only normally use on the iPad or iPhone when I've been recording. So it's all part of the big adventure for improving online communication. Because I think you had something this week, didn't you, with technology?
I bought a lapel mic, but discovered that it doesn't work with my laptop. I didn't do my research properly, failed to do my research. But I was just thinking, and we were talking about this the other day, I think by the time we're all finished, we should have a bit of a car boot between us all, with all the bits of kit that we've bought that we thought were really going to solve the problems, but that actually haven't worked out that way at all. And maybe we can pass them on to somebody else who'll make better use of them, because I've got a growing pile now of stuff that I know I'm never going to use again.
It's funny, I wonder if there will be a statistic on because somebody somewhere will track it, even if it's the independent sellers like Amazon or whoever. What do people buy the most of during lockdown? Beyond the essential goods, what's the business essential goods?
Yeah.
I don't know, it'd be interesting because yeah,
buying patterns will have changed completely, won't they, in terms of what we've been buying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our time as well, back to time, but the sudden realization that I can deliver shed loads more training by sitting in one place than by going and staying in a hotel the night before, going and setting up the room and packing it down and leaving and traveling home and all of those things, which I obviously still will do, and they're really important parts of the whole service offer. But somehow being aware that there are easier ways to communicate certain levels of information. It's been surprising for me.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned communication, because I think that would be my word of the week, almost, communication, and how we are having to adapt in the way that we communicate because we can't see each other face to face. And I've experienced that with clients, with friends, with family, in all sorts of ways, and how it is quite different doing it online. And I know quite a lot of clients, have said, we talked about this before, I couldn't possibly do coaching online, or it just, it really wouldn't work for me at all. And would still stand by that. Given the choice, they would still, do face-to-face. I think probably as would I, although I'm learning pretty fast that it doesn't have to be that way. But I do wonder how we will adapt our communication techniques for this. Well, it's not even a new way of communicating, is it, really? But it's certainly being expanded beyond what it has been up until now, anyway.
I wonder what what's the contrast? Because we can do quite a lot of communication this way. We can get across some nuts and bolts of information. We can screen share. We can see some gestures, some facial expressions. But there's a load more that we're missing, isn't there? Would you say?
Absolutely. What is the statistic about what percentage of communication is just the words that we say?
Small,
and the rest is everything else. And as you say, we when we can see each other, even if it's online, we can get this kind of communication, which is great. But there is just so much more to it, isn't there, in terms of seeing the whole body, seeing the shifts, seeing what the hands are doing, even what the feet are doing. And I think as a lot of the communication I'm doing right now is actually even without seeing somebody, so having to calibrate just from what's written down. And we're not used to writing in the sense of having long sentences and explanation and detail and description. Our world, I think, today is built on 140 characters, although I know it's not 140 anymore. That kind of short, sharp sentence, lots and lots of abbreviation, lots of words missed out, all of that. So you kind of completely lose that tonality to it all. So that's, I think you have to be very skilled to read, to calibrate, which is obviously what we would do, with a client right from the very first contact that we would have with them. And there's also something about being in the same room as somebody. There's an energy exchange somehow, whatever your belief is, scientifically we're all made of energy, and whether you kind of really feel that or not, it's happening, whether we like it or not. And so that's quite different over the airways as well. Would you say the same? Obviously you're saying you've been Zooming a lot today, which is quite different to how you would normally do business.
Yeah, I think there are a number of points that strike a chord. The whole principle of digital content. I mean, there are massive industries made up of experts who deal entirely with digital content, and I know a tiny little bit about that, which, for example, the way that we read on a screen is different to the way we read and in a book and on paper, and the way that punctuation occurs on the screen, like you say, it's very short. The sentences are extremely short, lots of full stops, very little ongoing punctuation. It's a very, I'm told, a very different way of running our brains when we interact with the screen. And I was thinking this week, just launched some, as you know, an online NLP training, which we were due to start certified practitioner training next week. And of course, we can't do that because it is a live and practical training. But what we can do is start the process of some of the online training, so that once lockdown's over, we'll be able to get people in the room. But NLP is a really good example, I think, of how we use the word calibrate. It's an important word in NLP, isn't it? You know, that measurement of all of the sensory experience of what's going on the outside, and how people's states are changing and their signals are shifting all the time. And even if it's something subtle like a foot tap or a, you know, whatever it may be, we do need to be able to somehow perceive that as part of our interaction. So yeah, we are missing lots, and I wonder if that will make us lazier and more inclined to make assumptions quickly on the snapshot of information that we have. I don't know. Also, just picking up on your point about energy, I think when I have a person or a group of people in front of me, I know I can make a big pause, I can hold the space, and they can't leave. Well, they could, but I could do something about it. So it makes the opportunity to use the space and the sound space and the physical space more deliberately on purpose. There's a greater confidence that comes, rather than this way, because if there's a pause, there's a, or do I need to fill it? Do I need to fill it? You know, yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, because we both operate from a place of, so what can we learn from this then? What can we do differently that makes it even better? I think what I've noticed is one of the things that I'm doing is asking more questions. So I might make one of those assumptions because I kind of have to, but then being really, really careful to check it out. And so where I might pick up information in other ways, I'm having to do it by asking the question and then, you know, kind of working with the response. And sometimes I don't think the type of question, well, no, maybe the type of question does change, because I think I'm asking more clarification questions to, you know, so I think what you've just said is, could you say more about, you know, when you said that, did you mean that kind of thing? So having that ability to focus perhaps more on some senses than others, which is a bit strange for an NLPer, really, because, you know, we're used to kind of using as much as possible, but just doing it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I think, well, I always have thought that you're particularly good at asking those good quality questions, and it's a very good skill in life generally. It's a great coaching skill, and it is a really good NLP skill to ask well-targeted questions. The clarification is an important one, as you say. I think that I'm just running through my mind. You're saying that you do more of it now online than you did before, and I already thought you did loads of it. So you must be getting lots of really good clarifications. I guess if I go to a stress position, I tend to run ahead really quickly, making loads and loads of quick assumptions. So I have to kind of slow down and go back to What would Tracey say? Tracey would ask a really good question here. Oh, I'm going to do that. But I think I like your point about that. You know, we both find the learning opportunity in every moment, in every difficulty, and this is a great time for us to be learning huge amounts about ourselves, about each other, the world that we live in, the people around us. And I think whether that's a natural bias or a practiced, rehearsed bias that we have probably doesn't matter. But what matters is that we are finding the opportunities to transform something different that comes towards us, that naturally we go, oh, this is different, I don't know what to do now, to, oh, what can I do, and what can I learn from this? I've definitely, again, going back to my point about technology, it seems to be on my radar this week. I have been forced into looking at some recordings which otherwise I would just chuck stuff out and it's gone, and I've looked at them, and whereas it would be easy to look at them critically, that isn't going to be helpful at all. What I want to look at the recordings to do is go, right, so next time, what will I do differently? What will I do more of and less of, or encourage more of or less of? And so it's a fast moving improvement, I guess, which is the business that we both work in, continuous improvement.
Yeah, it's about mindset, isn't it? And choosing which lens you want to see stuff through. And that's not to say that, we don't acknowledge where things could be different, because that's kind of all part of the process, but it's about acknowledging how you want to make those changes and what might that look like instead, rather than, which is kind of quite forward looking, isn't it, rather than the backward, oh, that was terrible and look what a mess I made over that. And I think that's part of the process. I don't think I'm saying that's not part of the process. And we all wallow, and it's, I don't think wallowing's a bad thing. It's when you stay in the wallow that I think that we start to not be as effective as we probably could be. And I think having the mindset of not staying in the wallow, but learning from that and kind of moving on from it is I think it's a really good strategy to use.
Yeah, I think that as you're speaking, my brain's making pictures, like a little cartoon strip of what wallowing is, and I'm seeing a group of pigs in a what do they call it, the mud bath in the forest, and they're all kind of moving but in the same place, but they're moving and rolling over and getting grubby and getting up and lying down, getting up, lying down, and sooner or later they'll move on through to the next wallow in the wood. I can see that as a useful metaphor. I was really, really lucky this week to be able to interview Dr. Richard Bandler, and which the recordings will be published soon. And in that, I was reminded of the absolute simplicity of thinking on purpose. That his latest book with Owen Fitzpatrick and Glenda Bradstock, and that thinking on purpose is about remembering how to behave when times get tough, or deciding to do it differently. And I guess I'm trying to pull that into the wallowing. There are some pigs who will just but
hippopotamuses,
whatever, they just remember how to get there and stay there, and others might just say, no, do you know what, this is a great time to be planning how we're going to leave the wallow, how we're going to get out, and what we want to do on the other side, and where we want to go, and what can we do now that will help us to hit the ground running.
Well, I like a good wallow. I'm like the best of us. I like a good wallow, but I do recognise when it's time to get out. It just becomes destructive after a while, doesn't it? That staying stuck thing.
I've had a few clients this week that, again, these things often resonate with where I'm at, which I know we've talked about before. Who've been saying, you know what, we're a month in now, I need structure. I need to bring structure back.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if, again, there's just a pattern of kind of undoing yourself and going, you know, each week on week getting up a bit later, going to bed a bit later, spending a bit longer doing this, wallowing here or whatever. And then there's this sort of blowout place where you go, do you know what, this isn't working for me anymore. I need to pull back some structures and disciplines. And I don't know whether that's true or not, but I've heard it as a common theme this week. Yeah, need a bit of structure. You got enough structure in your life?
It feels like it. I am so lucky, and I know we've talked about this before, that I have to go and feed the horses every day and you know, check on them, and I get to walk the dogs, you know, at the farm as well. So I have a lot of freedom to do that. And because we're having to be a bit careful about what time, you know, because there are lots of us at the farm and we can't all go at the same time. So we kind of go at about the same time every day-ish. So I know when my slot is, and you know, if I don't make it, it's not the end of the world, but it does kind of make life a little bit tricky. So I know that's what I have to do. So that's kind of what gets me up in the morning, because I know I have to go and do that and walk the dogs, because they're relying on me. I can't just go, I can't be bothered today. I have to do that. So once I'm up and doing it, I think the rest of my day is much easier to manage. I think if I didn't have that, well, that would be a huge change for me anyway, because I've had that for years and years and years and years and years. I've had to do that. So if that was removed from my life, as well as, you know, everything else that's happened, I would find that really hard. And I know some places where that's happened, people haven't been able to go and do their horses, and it is really difficult for them.
Reminds me of the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and I think knowing yourself is what it's all about. I remember as quite a young person realizing that I would build these outrageously huge plans that involved other people, and then I would have to deliver because I couldn't let the other people down. So it's back, you know, whether it's people or horses or things, but there's something about when you set that up to make sure that you know, you stay on course. It is a strategy for motivation. Not right or wrong, it's just a strategy, and it's certainly one that I find works for me. And you know, if I can put in an 8 a.m. client, then you know, whilst at 7:45 I might think, why did I do that? I know that it's you know, a good discipline.
I think
whereas I wouldn't get up to go for a run at 5 or 6 because nobody else would, you know, be involved in that. But if there's somebody else involved, I find that a very useful motivator.
I find it's often a conversation that people have when they're thinking about arranging to have some coaching, that for people who are used to doing things for themselves and fixing problems and sorting things out and just, you know, just do it, that actually the decision to have coaching can be not more difficult, but you know, just kind of maybe thinking about it in a slightly different way, because the thought that they might need somebody else to help them is so alien to them. So it's always interesting to have that conversation. And they're often the clients who will make contact, go away, make contact, go away, make contact, go away. There are lots of other reasons why people might do that, but because they're kind of struggling with this little battle of, I should be able to fix this, I should be able to do this for myself. And actually, I do firmly believe that we cannot always solve our own problems, that we need a different perspective on things. We might need a slightly different skill set, any of that.
Einstein who said that you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness as the one you created it in. And I do think that there's a sort of faulty filter in thinking that you're going to somebody else to help yourself actually you're going to a different filter set or a different level of consciousness to help your filters and levels of consciousness, aren't you? Yeah.
I think coaching is quite often, I believe coaching is it is very different from any kind of psychotherapy, counselling, other kind of psychological interventions. But I think it gets badged along with others where the understanding is that these clients are going somewhere to be fixed. You know, they're going somewhere to have somebody sort you out. And I don't know about the other modalities because I have worked in a couple, but I think you know, when we talk about NLP and the fact that the individual has the resources that they need to be able to do whatever it is they need to do, they might just need a little something, a little word, a thinking strategy, you know, a different pinpoint, you know, it's just different something to be able to do that. So it's quite interesting to think about it in a slightly different way, really, that actually the clients are not coming to be fixed. I don't want to do that. That's I just ask the stupid questions. That's how I describe it.
Yeah, I really, and that reminds me of meta model. You know, it's the and the Virginia Satir iceberg, where you know, you just see the surface, you hear the surface words and the beliefs, and observe the behaviors and the outputs, but underneath it there's that big structure of all the beliefs and values and all the patterns that exist underneath it. And I really like that sort of good question just goes down and down and down and just pulls up the right thing at the right time, at the right place, in a way that something can change. And that is this. I wonder if, in fact, I had this conversation with another colleague earlier today about I am fiercely independent, and I don't want people to be dependent on me, and I don't want to be dependent on other people. It's just how it's always been for me, and it's worked out okay. But that, I think, is helpful to me in my work, because I am not responsible for somebody's change. I have a responsibility towards helping them, if you know, if that's the transaction. But I don't want anybody to be dependent on me for change, or for me to be dependent on them to behave in a certain way so that I know I've succeeded, because I think that is inherently wrong. We, as coaches, we just kind of just little chink here, little chink there, and you go, okay, yeah, maybe next time we'll go a little bit more that way, and maybe a little bit more that way, and it's that sort of augmenting, which I really like.
Yeah, I think it changes the dynamic to something less honest for me if people become dependent on coaching. And I often say to clients that I'm kind of doing myself out of business, because with my coaching clients, but also my riding clients, I don't want them to wait for me every week before they can start to you know, train their horse or do their own change work. I want them to be able to pick stuff up and be able to go and work with it themselves. I might do a bit of tweaking next time we see them, but that's my job to help them to become independent.
Yeah, I really like that. It's a value that's very close to my heart too. It's interesting, and I think, you know, again, in the sports world, we can take a lot of good example from, you know, what good sports coaching is, because a lot of athletes have several coaches, don't they, for different purposes. And you know, it's none of us are as smart as all of us, and you know, the output is the thing that everybody's focused on enhancing.
That's a really good thought.
Well, on that happy thought, I think we'll probably call it a day for today. Thank you so much, as always, Tracey. It's always great to catch up with you on our what's becoming a weekly now. We started off with monthly, and then sort of poodled around. Must have been doing this for nearly a year in some way, shape or form. But it's always great to catch up with you, find out what's on your radar, and as a thoroughly nice human being, as a great happy brain coach, and a fantastic coach of all other things. And
more.
Yeah.
Always enjoy the chat.
Yeah, it's good to chat. Thanks, Tracey.
Okay, see you next time.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.